I woke up to a deafening roar. My entire body ached as if I had been brutally beaten. My head throbbed with pain, and I struggled to open my eyes. My hands felt the cold concrete beneath them, and my legs were heavy, as if I had run a marathon without stopping. Around me, there was a grim silence, occasionally interrupted by distant echoes, groans of the wounded, and the squeak of broken lights. I lay on the floor of a metro station surrounded by rubble and dark tunnels disappearing into the unknown. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and metal. Trying to remember what had happened, I felt a sense of unease and dread wash over me. My last memories were vague sounds of explosions, people screaming, madness and panic. I remembered something terrible had happened, but the details slipped away from my memory like dust in the wind. My name was Alex. That's all I could say about myself at that moment. Trying to get up, I felt my legs wobble under me. Shifting my gaze from the floor to the walls and ceiling, I noticed crumbling arches and collapsed walls. A dark corridor stretched ahead, inviting me to explore the new horrors of this world. My clothes were torn, and my body was covered in bruises and cuts. I reached for my face, feeling my lips dry and wind-battered. Numerous bodies lay around, and I dared not look to see if there were any familiar faces among them. Getting to my feet, I found weapons and a flashlight near one of the bodies. Feeling that they were the only chance I had to survive, I grabbed them and cautiously headed deeper into the station. With each step, the darkness thickened. The feeble light of the flashlight revealed only fragments of walls and debris covered in dust and cobwebs. My footsteps echoed in the uneven corridors, creating an illusion that I was not alone. Suddenly, I heard a faint rustling ahead. Tensing up, I aimed with my weapon, preparing for any threat. The rustling grew louder, and soon I saw a silhouette slowly approaching me. "Who's there?" My voice trembled as I shouted into the darkness. The silhouette froze, and I discerned it was a woman. Her face was pale and tense, her clothes ragged and dirty. In her hands, she held something small and motionless. I approached her, assessing her condition. She looked worn out but determined. "What happened? Who are you?" My questions came out faster than I could think.
They came from the tunnels. Creatures. Horrible.
Her words hung in the air, as if she was trying not to recall the horrors she had seen. A shiver ran down my spine. If the tunnels had become a source of danger, these were not just monsters, they were something far worse. "We need to find other survivors," I said, feeling her determination transfer to me, "and figure out what these creatures are that attacked us." She nodded, and together we moved forward. Every step was a trial, and we were prepared for anything that might await us in this dark void. Venturing further into the tunnels, we stumbled upon a small group of people gathered around a dimly flickering lantern. Their faces showed exhaustion and despair, but there was still a spark of hope in their eyes. "Who are you? What happened here?" My questions came out louder than I expected. One of the men standing closer to us stepped forward.
We survived.
His voice was low and trembling.
Those creatures, they came from the depths of the tunnels, attacked suddenly like demons from underground, killed everyone in their path.
I gripped the handle of my weapon, feeling the tension in the air grow. What were these creatures? And where did they come from? "We need to seal off the tunnel entrances," I stated firmly. "It's the only way to stop them." The survivors nodded in agreement, and we got to work. Barricades were fashioned from debris and equipment found in the station's ruins. At night, we stood guard, listening intently for any sound that could herald a new danger. That night, a nightmare visited me. I saw dark tunnels from which unearthly shadows crawled, wrapping around innocent victims and carrying them away into the darkness. I heard their screams, piercing and hopeless, echoing like the echoes of an abyss. Waking up in cold sweat, I realized it wasn't just a dream. These horrors were real, living and breathing in our dark corners. They hunted us, setting their traps and manipulating our fears. The next morning, we gathered to discuss our next steps. It was decided to venture into the tunnels to uncover the source of the threat and find a way to protect the station. As we advanced deeper into the metro, we came across walls covered in strange symbols. They glowed in the darkness, like lights guiding the way to ancient secrets. These marks resembled ancient runes, their meanings lost to time. "We're close," I whispered, trying not to succumb to despair. Moving forward, we heard strange sounds, inhuman and distorted. They were cries mixed with animal roars, piercing our hearts and minds. Soon we saw them, the creatures that cursed this world with their existence. These beings were far from human. Their skin was covered in scales, like dragons from fairy tales, and their eyes glowed red, filled with anger and thirst for vengeance. They were armed with claws as sharp as razors, and their bodies were agile and swift like predators. We opened fire, but the bullets seemed futile against their armored bodies. They attacked us with mad fury, and the battle seemed hopeless. I fought for every breath, for every shot, despite the exhaustion and fear that filled my heart. In the critical moment, I remembered the symbols on the walls. They seemed to hold the key to unraveling the mystery that had befallen our station. I began to read them aloud, the words coming to me as if inspired by a higher power. The words sounded powerful and strange, their sounds resonating in the tunnel's silence. Suddenly, something strange began to happen around us. The air filled with charged energy, creating an atmosphere full of mystery and fear. The monsters paused, as if held back by an invisible force. Their attacks slowed down, and their cries began to lose their fury. I kept reading, as if carrying light into this darkness-engulfed abyss. Suddenly, before our eyes, the monsters began to disappear, dissolving into thin air. All that remained of them were sparks of light that vanished into the darkness like phantoms returning to the world of shadows. We had won, but the price was high. Only a few people from the group of survivors remained. Together we returned to the station, exhausted and worn out but alive. Despite our triumphant return to the station, the shadow of the threat loomed over us. In the weeks that followed, we faced new attacks from the monsters. They were even more aggressive and numerous than before. Our weapons and food supplies quickly dwindled, survivors became fewer, and the attacks grew more frequent and unpredictable. We could not hold out forever. One night, when darkness swallowed the station, the monsters launched a fierce assault. We tried to fight back, but our strength was waning. I watched as my friends fell under the monsters' blows, with no chance of survival. When they stormed our last fortified corner, I realized it was the end. Our station, our home, our hope, all were destroyed. The monsters left us no chance of survival. Now I lie on the floor, surrounded by rubble and the bodies of those who stood until the end. My flame of hope has extinguished, and darkness envelops me once again. This is not a story of victory, but of defeat. Of how darkness engulfed us, how our fears and weaknesses became our end. We could not protect our world from the threat that came from the depths of forgotten tunnels. Now I await my end, for all that lies beyond this room is endless darkness and monsters coming for me, to erase my last trace of hope. This is the end of my story.